Welcome to the AI Hub, a podcast for AI-driven side hustles designed for IT professionals like you.
From cutting-edge AI tools to practical, no-nonsense tips, each episode brings you closer to turning tech into income.
Tune in to discover smart and sustainable ways to boost your career and income with AI.
Welcome back to AI Hub, everyone. I'm Larry, one of your hosts.
And I'm Amanda.
And we are ready for another deep dive into the world of AI. Today, we're tackling LLMs, large language models.
Those AI systems like ChatGPT that everyone's been talking about.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's talking about them these days.
Yep.
And for good reason, right? I mean, they can do some pretty incredible things.
You really can. Write poems, summarize complex research, even hold conversations that honestly can be pretty mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing is a good word for it. But as with anything that's powerful, there are some questions.
Right. Questions about how they work, how we can trust them. The article we're looking at today from AI Magazine calls it the black box dilemma.
The black box dilemma, huh?
Yeah, it's like we're amazed by the magic trick, but we have absolutely no idea how it's done. We see the impressive output, but the actual processes happening within these LLMs are just so incredibly complex and opaque.
So opaque that we can't even begin to understand them.
Well, it's not that we can't understand them at all. It's more like trying to understand the inner workings of a super advanced computer chip just by looking at the outside. You know, there's a lot going on in there, but figuring out exactly how it all works, tracing those specific inputs to outputs, that's where things get really tricky.
Okay, I get it. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the problems, maybe we should take a step back. Like, how did we even get to this point? Amanda, could you give us like a crash course on the evolution of LLMs?
Oh, absolutely. So the development of these models has been pretty remarkable. We've seen like three main types emerge. We've got the encoder-only models, the decoder-only models, and the decoder models.
Three different types.
Yeah, each with their own sort of strengths and weaknesses. Like encoder-only models, those are awesome for tasks like analyzing text sentiment, figuring out if a piece of writing is positive or negative. Then you've got decoder-only models, which are they're fantastic for generating creative text formats like poems or scripts. And then, of course, there's the encoder-decoder models. Those are especially good at translations, like taking a sentence in English and turning it into, say, Spanish.
Okay, so three different approaches, each with its own specialty. I'm guessing they've all been evolving pretty rapidly.
Oh, absolutely. The pace of advancement has been incredible. But there was one particular breakthrough that really changed the game. In 2018, something called the transformer architecture was introduced.
Transformer, like the robots.
Not quite, though it did kind of transform the field. See, before that, models processed information in a very linear way, one word at a time. The transformer allowed for parallel processing, which made them so much faster and more efficient.
Ah, so that's why we've seen such a jump in capabilities in recent years.
Exactly. The transformer architecture paved the way for the incredibly powerful models we have now, like GPT-3. GPT-3 has a mind-boggling 175 billion parameters.
Okay, hold on. 175 billion, what exactly are parameters in this context?
You're right to be impressed. It is a lot. Basically, parameters are like the knobs and dials that control the model's behavior. The more parameters, the more nuanced and complex its understanding of language can be. And GPT-3, it has a lot of knobs and dials.
So we've got these insanely powerful tools that can do all sorts of amazing things with language, but we don't really understand how they work.
That's the black box problem in a nutshell. And it's not just a theoretical problem. This opacity has some real-world consequences that we need to consider.
Like what kind of consequences?
Well, for one thing, if you don't understand why an LLM produces a specific output, it can be incredibly difficult to identify and fix errors. How can we correct a mistake if we don't even know what caused it?
It's kind of like trying to fix a car engine without knowing anything about mechanics. You might just make things worse.
Exactly. And then there's the whole issue of bias. If an LLM is trained on data that contains biased language, there's a real risk that it could perpetuate those biases in its output. And if we can't see how the model is processing that data, we can't be sure it's not happening.
So it's not just about satisfying our curiosity. It's about ensuring that these incredibly powerful tools are being used responsibly and ethically. Mm-hmm. And that's a big deal.
Absolutely. And it's something that lawmakers and regulators are starting to pay more attention to. There's growing pressure for greater transparency in AI development to address these very real concerns.
So it seems like we're at a pretty critical point, right? We've got these amazing tools with enormous potential, but they're shrouded in mystery. So is there any way to lift the veil on this black box without sacrificing the capabilities of these LLMs? Is there a solution out there?
Well, that's where things get interesting. The AI Magazine article we're looking at actually proposes a solution, a layered approach to transparency.
Layered approach, huh? That sounds promising.
And that's exactly what we'll be exploring as we continue our deep dive.
So, a layered approach to transparency. What does that even mean?
Well, think of it this way. It's all about providing insights into how these LLMs work. But, without giving away all the secrets, without compromising proprietary information.
Okay, so giving away some of the blueprints, but not the whole shebang.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Imagine giving someone the blueprint of a building. They can see the overall structure, how the different parts connect, but they don't necessarily need the detailed schematics for every single electrical wire or pipe.
Gotcha. So how would this layered approach actually work? What steps could companies take to implement it?
Well, the article suggests a couple of key methods. One is developing robust governance frameworks for AI development. Think of it as setting ground rules from the get-go, establishing clear guidelines and standards for transparency, ethical considerations, all throughout the process.
Right, so baking in responsible AI development practices right from the start. Makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah, another crucial aspect is regular auditing of the models. Independent assessments, kind of checkups to make sure everything's running smoothly, check for biases, adherence to ethical principles, that kind of thing.
So it's like having an external body keeping things in check. I could see how that would help build trust with the public too.
Absolutely. And it's important to note that this whole push for transparency isn't happening in isolation. There's a broader trend towards more open discourse about AI development, more focus on ethical considerations. We're seeing it in industry standards and even government regulations, like the European Union's AI Act. That's a prime example of this movement.
All right, so it seems like the days of the mysterious black box LLM might be numbered. We might be moving towards a future where we can actually understand and trust these systems.
That's the hope, but there are definitely still some challenges ahead. Achieving true transparency with such complex technology, it's not a walk in the park.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest roadblocks?
Well, one of the trickiest things is just defining what transparency actually means in the context of LLMs. How much detail is enough to ensure understanding and accountability without hindering innovation or giving away sensitive information.
Right. So finding that balance is going to be crucial. And then there's the whole user experience aspect, explaining how these things work in a way that everyone can understand without getting bogged down in technical jargon. That's a challenge in itself.
It really is. We want to empower people with knowledge, but we don't want to overwhelm them. So finding that sweet spot between transparency and user friendliness is going to be key.
And of course, there are the practical challenges. Actually implementing these transparency measures, like developing the governance frameworks, conducting the audits, designing those user-friendly explanations. That all takes a lot of effort and resources.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's the whole debate about the role of regulation. Should there be more government oversight to make sure AI development happens ethically? Or is industry self-regulation the better approach? There are valid points on both sides. Finding the right balance there is going to be pretty crucial.
It's a lot to consider. And we can't forget about the potential for unintended consequences. Could all this transparency actually make these systems more vulnerable? If we're revealing more about how they work, could that give malicious actors more opportunities to manipulate or exploit them?
It's definitely a double-edged sword. Transparency is essential for trust and accountability, but it could also open up new vulnerabilities. We have to be very mindful of that.
So it's we're sailing into uncharted waters. Exciting, but a little nerve-wracking too.
Absolutely. AI is a new frontier, and with any new frontier, there are bound to be unexpected challenges. But that's part of the thrill of it, right? Discovering new things, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's a journey of discovery.
Yeah.
And we're all on it together. So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What's the next chapter in this whole story of LLMs and transparency?
Well, I think collaboration is key. We need researchers, developers, policymakers, everyone working together to shape a future where AI is both powerful and trustworthy.
And the article we've been discussing today it provides a pretty solid framework for that collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Like it stresses the importance of open dialogue, ethical considerations, and a commitment to building AI that benefits everyone.
Exactly. And I think that's a great place to wrap up our discussion. We've covered a lot of ground, but hopefully it's given everyone some food for thought. The future of AI is still being written, and it's up to all of us to make sure it's a future we can be proud of.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about like how fast this whole field is moving and where it's going to go next.
It's almost like watching a science fiction movie unfold in real time, right? All those things we used to just imagine about AI, they're becoming our reality.
And with that comes a lot of responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to make sure we're using this technology wisely. I'm curious, what are some of the key things we need to focus on as we move forward with LLMs and with AI in general?
Well, I think education is a huge one. The more people understand about how these systems work, their limitations, their potential impact, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about how we use them.
Yeah, we can't just leave it to the experts. Everyone needs to be a part of this conversation.
Exactly. And I think another big area of focus needs to be research. Research into making these systems more robust, more reliable, more resistant to, manipulation and misuse. Like we've touched on the potential for bad actors, and that's something we need to take very seriously, especially as these AI systems get more and more powerful.
It's like with any powerful tool, right? There's always the potential for it to be used for good or for bad. It all comes down to how we choose to use it.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it's important to remember that these models are, at the end of the day, reflections of ourselves. They're trained on the data that we provide. So it's on us to make sure that data is diverse, unbiased, representative of, the world we want to create.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that AI isn't some separate entity out there. It's a product of human ingenuity, and we're the ones who are shaping its development.
And it's an ongoing process, right? We're learning as we go, adapting, refining our approach. It's never going to be like a finished product.
It's a journey, and who knows what amazing discoveries are waiting for us down the road.
Yeah.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following the world of AI.
It really is, and it's been a pleasure exploring some of these ideas with you today.
Likewise. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into LLMs and the quest for transparency. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe to AI Hub for more fascinating conversations about the world of AI. Until next time, stay curious.
Welcome to the AI Hub, a podcast for AI-driven side hustles designed for IT professionals like you.
From cutting-edge AI tools to practical, no-nonsense tips, each episode brings you closer to turning tech into income.
Tune in to discover smart and sustainable ways to boost your career and income with AI.